Okay, HB 174, Loretta Fuddy, Department of Health, oppose. Angela Rosa, support. Carol Reinman from Monsanto, oppose.
And if you're here, you can just indicate that you're going to stand on your written testimony.
Pauline Rasmussen, in support. Diana Moss, in support. David Murch, oppose. Doug Vincent, oppose. Dustin Cole, oppose. Fred Perlak, oppose.
Aloha.
Aloha. Committeewoman and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity. I've submitted to testify before you today. My name is Fred Perlak. I'm Vice President of Research and Business Operations for Monsanto in Hawaii. We strongly oppose HB 174. I've submitted formal testimony and I have two brief comments for the committee to consider. Please do not ignore the large body of scientific evidence and years of safe use that demonstrate the safety of these GMO products. I am very familiar with many of the GM plants in the marketplace today, and I'm willing and able to answer any questions that you might have. Also, the question before us on labeling is not a question of safety. Labeling is a means of trying to differentiate food products where no differences exist. There are no nutritional differences or valid safety concerns. The cost of the proposed bill will be significant to consumers, farmers, businesses, and taxpayers. The right to know should not be at the expense of everyone's right to affordable food. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joanne Young, oppose. Javier Menendez Alvarez, support. Paul Archinoff, support.
Where's his testimony? Where's his testimony?
Aloha.
Aloha, and thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm Paul Achitoff, an attorney with Earth Justice. And Earth Justice supports this bill. The people of Hawaii have a right to know whether the foods they purchase, consume, feed to their family, and serve to others have been produced through genetic engineering. This is not only a question of health. Genetically engineered foods, the production of them have a variety of serious environmental problems that are well established in the science. It's a fact that the production of these crops has caused the use of hundreds of millions of additional pounds of herbicide on our fields. It's a fact that millions of acres of our agricultural lands are now infested with herbicide-resistant weeds as a direct result of constant dousing with Roundup, to which these crops have been engineered to be resistant. Nearly half of all of U.S. farmers now report Roundup-resistant weeds in their fields as a direct result of having grown genetically engineered crops. This is up from only 34% the year before. The herbicide that is now used on these crops is now found in groundwater, surface water, and even in rainwater throughout the Mississippi Basin, according to a recent study by the USGS. It's a fact that U.S. farmers have suffered more than $1 billion in damage as a result of their crops being contaminated with genetically engineered varieties. Our rice farmers alone suffered about $1 billion in damages as a result of contamination with genetically engineered rice just a few years ago. And numerous studies have suggested a link between ingestion of certain genetically engineered foods and serious abnormalities in laboratory animals and farm animals. Poll after poll has shown that a large majority of people throughout the country and in Hawaii want genetically engineered foods labeled so that they can decide for themselves what to purchase, what to eat, what to feed their families, and what to serve to other people. Neither the companies that genetically engineer the crops, nor the farmers who choose to grow them for their own convenience, nor the companies that process them have a right to enrich themselves by forcing everyone to buy their food blindfolded. Secrecy at the expense of others is not an acceptable method of marketing or enhancing profitability. So I respectfully ask you to pass this bill. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Gary Hoosier.
Good afternoon, members, chair, vice chair. My name is Gary Hoosier. I'm an elected member of the Kauai County Council. I'm speaking today on my own behalf as an individual. However, I wanted to point out, I think it's important that to point out that the Kauai County Council, Maui County Council, and Hawaii County Councils all passed resolutions in support of mandatory labeling of GMO products in the HSAC package, proposed package. I'm testifying today in strong support of House Bill 174, which requires specific labeling for food and raw agricultural commodities sold in the state. I think it's also important to point out that many nations around the world already require labeling of GMO products, and that major U.S. grocery retailers are also now supporting national labeling requirements. Passage of this measure will add further momentum to the national movement to label, and Hawaii can be a leader in this effort. There are many reasons to support labeling, but the core principle is that people have the right to know and the right to choose what they are buying and what they are consuming. Some consumers are concerned about health implications of consuming GMO foods. Without question, the level of sensitivity to chemicals and food allergies vary tremendously from person to person, and without labeling, people are unable to make informed choices. Though there have been numerous studies of the health impacts of consuming GMO products, few of these studies have been conducted by independent researchers focusing on the long-term impacts on humans, specifically children and pregnant women. Other consumers, including myself, are equally concerned about the moral, ethical, and political implications of buying GMO products, and we also deserve the right to know and choose. These concerns include the environmental and social consequences caused by the commercialization and patenting of new life forms. These implications are far-reaching and yet largely unknown. Additionally, the globalization and ownership of the world food supply by a handful of multinational companies is detrimental to food sovereignty and threatens the foundation of traditional agrarian communities. The reduction of biodiversity caused by the concentration of a single dominant species developed through genetic modification will ultimately weaken that species and cause yet unknown impacts to related species. Transgenic foods created when crossing animal and plant genes have impacts we cannot begin to understand, and those with vegetarian diets based on religious concerns deserve the right to know. Locally, the explosive growth of the GMO industry has driven up the cost of farmland to the detriment of farmers who actually grow food for local consumption. Most of the debate on GMO labeling focused on the health implications or the claim that GMO foods are substantially equivalent and thus should not be labeled. However, there are precedents in law for additional reasons to mandate labeling in food items, including dolphin-safe labeling laws, which were enacted for environmental protection reasons. For these reasons, combined with the health and diet implications, myself and many other consumers believe we should be able to choose whether or not we would like to purchase and consume these products. It is government's role and a fundamental responsibility to protect the health and welfare of the people and of the INA. There is no question that more and more people are trying to take back control of their diets and to make better choices with regards to the foods that they consume. I strongly urge this committee to unanimously pass out House Bill 174 and to support the right of the people of Hawaii to know what is in the food they are consuming and to make informed choices based on whatever reason they choose. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jessica Mitchell, in support.
Jessica Mitchell.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jessica Mitchell. I am a concerned mother. I am here today because I support this bill. I and many mothers deserve the right to know what we are feeding our children, what we are eating ourselves. And I would also like to point out to Mr. Perlak, if it is a money issue with labeling GMOs, why did Choi, Suji, Ito, Har, Say, and others start a bill that says they should label not GMO foods? So that confuses me. Thank you for listening to my testimony, and I support this bill.
Okay, Jessica White in support with John Naylor next in support. John Naylor. J.W. Nalda in support. Karen Chun in support. Kurt Von Hayden in support. Lance Atkins oppose. Lance Kosh in support. Lauren Zerbil, Hawaii Food Industry Association, oppose. Lisa Andrews in support. Lauren Mochida, W.H. Shipman in opposition.
Chairman, Vice Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Lauren Mochida. I'm the Director of Agricultural Operations, W.H. Shipman on the Big Island in KL. We currently lease lands to over 120 individual growers. W.H. Shipman and the growers are strongly opposed to HB 174 relating to food labeling. Labeling requirements as regulated by the Food and Drug Administration is intended to communicate information that is relevant to health, safety, and nutrition. FDA states that there are no significant difference between foods produced using biotechnology and their conventional counterparts. The Hawaii Papaya Industry Association coordinated the deregulation of the genetically engineered rainbow papaya in the continental U.S. and Canada. Both countries do not require labeling of this safe papaya, and it was developed no differently than the conventional breeding techniques. Without the biotechnology of the rainbow papaya, there would be no papaya industry in the state of Hawaii today. USDA, Environmental Protection Agency, and FDA have already proven that the biotech rainbow papaya is safe for the environment and human consumption. Due to this, there are no federal or state requirements that these foods be labeled. We have been eating this delicious biotech papaya for over 12 years without any ill effect or side. Our growers are already struggling with high costs of production, processing, and transportation costs. Labeling requirements that are not necessary only increases the burden for these hard-working growers. And I thank you for the opportunity to testify on HB 174.
Thank you. Next testify Maria Maitino in support. Mike Beiersdorf in opposition. Mitsuko Hayakawa in support. Next up would be Raymond Foster in opposition.
Excuse
Yes.
me, Chair. Hi, my name is Mitsuko Hayakawa. I'm in support of HB 174 to label GMO foods. I am a mother of 3 children, and I have known about GMOs in our food supply and signed a petition with the Organic Consumers Association to prohibit GMOs in the USDA organic standards many years ago. I consider myself to be more informed than the average consumer about natural foods, as I grew up in a religion that advocates natural farming. However, after moving to Hawaii from California 4 years ago, I had difficulty finding the organic products at prices I could afford. So there were times when I occasionally bought conventional foods, but I always read the labels. However, last year when I started to do extensive research on GMOs and discovered to my horror that I have been buying products that contain them and have been feeding them to my children. Had they been labeled on the package, I would not have bought them. I believe there are many mothers like me who would make different choices if GMOs were labeled, and for them I ask you to support this bill. Scientists admit that they still have much to learn about genes and gene technology. Just a couple of weeks ago, a discovery was made about the cauliflower mosaic virus that are present in most GMOs, including 54 of the already approved GMOs in our food supply. According to virologist Jonathan Latham, GMO regulators around the world have been complacent and incompetent. They have had the details about this cauliflower mosaic virus promoter even before GMOs were ever approved, but are now identifying the danger. Now the scientist is calling on regulators to recall GMOs that use this potentially disastrous promoter, and simply telling consumers that if you want to avoid GMOs, you should eat organic is not taking into account that the fact that millions of people are eating GMOs without their knowing and their consent. It is a human rights issue. I believe it is the responsibility of the food industry to inform the consumer of what they are buying. They are the ones choosing to use substances that haven't been proven safe and not from nature. And ultimately, it is our children who must pay the highest price with their health. Someday, I believe it will be widely accepted that GMOs pose dangerous risks to our health. And just like as we witnessed with the cigarette industry, would legislators who oppose labeling be willing to take personal responsibility for the health of my children and their peers? When that is the case, no. So I ask you today to support this bill and allow us, parents, to make informed choices on what we feed our children. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Raymond Foster in opposition. Roy Matos in opposition. Shannon Rudolph in support. Ty Lee Medeiros in opposition. Umani Cynthia Groves in support, with William Bailey up next in support. Go ahead.
Aloha, Chairman and Committee. I'm Unmani Cynthia Groves. I am a healthcare practice management consultant of over 20 years. I've been studying the literature on GMOs since 2003 when it was given to pigs, and I was shocked to see that it was actually given to human beings at that point, so I started researching. I did bring a number of studies that have been done, submitted in testimony afterwards. The woman who spoke before me referred to the study that was done on regulators who discovered a hidden viral gene in commercial GMO crops that has widespread implications in terms of the genetic, you can say, mutation that happens, particularly in our children. We're seeing amazing changes in ADD, with ADD, We're seeing, which is attention deficit disorder. We're seeing GMOs now being termed obesogens, contributing to insulin resistance, which is widespread in Hawaii as well as across the nation. These things are widely known in the scientific field, and I think we really need to start looking at this. I'm totally in support of Gary Hooser's comments. It's absolutely what I've experienced. I experienced a testimony that came from Maui. There were over 80 people that testified, and we're 100% in support of GMO labeling. I also have a European study on GMO soy, the lack of transparency, the risks to the agriculture. I think we need to really take these studies seriously. I also, in terms of the bill itself, on page 2, I don't know if you have that bill in front of you. Do you? Okay. On page 2, first line, maybe I'll refer to the number 1718 of page 1, and then go to page 1 and 2. The organism from which the food is derived has been injected or otherwise treated with genetically engineered materials. It begins to say, except the use of manure as a fertilizer for raw agricultural commodities. It says it shall not be construed to mean that those commodities are produced with a genetically engineered material. These kinds of exceptions are going to be harmful. And I would change that word. I'll go into it, but I'll change that. I recommend changing it to saying, except, where it says except, include the treatment of genetically engineered manure as a fertilizer for raw agricultural commodities shall be construed to mean both those commodities are produced with a genetically engineered material. Now, the problem with accepting it, okay, and this probably came in my late testimony for Bill 489, is that that Bill 489 that you were discussing exempts inspection of fish ponds, and the fish in those fish ponds are being fed GMO soy. And if they're fed GMO soy, that means that those are genetically modified, and they're going into poop, which goes into fertilizers, and as it stands right now, that is not labeled, which means labeled, GMO. So what that means is a lot of folks out there that are organic farmers are going to be not knowing that that fertilizer is going to be put on their land, which is going to contaminate the land.
Okay, Cynthia, can you summarize, please?
Yeah. Okay, that's a change I'd make. The other change I'd make in this bill is the section on page 3. It would be number D. The section shall not apply to foods or raw agricultural commodities, and it lists a few things. It's a very simple fix just to say they shall apply. Take out the word not. They shall apply, but not be limited to foods or raw agricultural commodities. Okay, and the reason why...
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is a good reason for doing it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. We'll let you testify after everybody has had a chance.
Okay, yeah.
If you want to.
It wasn't much more to say, but, I thank
Okay,
you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, our next testifier is William Bailey. In support. Carol Gottlieb, Hawaii Cattlemen's Council. In opposition. Brooke Pruder, in support. Dwayne Cipriano, in opposition. Gregory Farrell, in opposition. James Brubaker, in opposition. Jill Matos, in opposition. Mike Ferguson, Hawaii Organic Farming Association, in support. With John Hewlett next.
Chairman, committee members. HOFA, the Hawaii Organic Farming Association, strongly supports the passage of HB 174. HOFA is an association of Hawaii organic farmers, distributors, retailers, other organic industry members, and organic consumers. We strongly support passage of this bill for the following reasons. So firstly, under the National Organic Program, genetic modification, or GM, is not approved for use in the production of organic foodstuffs. The production of GM foods presents the risk of contamination in the growing, processing, and handling of foodstuffs, and thus GM foods pose an economic threat to organic farming and agriculture. Secondly, food production should be moving towards more sustainable methods of agriculture, foods and farming methods that are in harmony with nature. That is, not using harmful chemicals such as insecticides, herbicides, chemical fertilizers, etc. GM foods are moving in the opposite direction, and their production results in unnatural foods with unknown long-term health and environmental risks and increased chemical use in the production of food. For example, the two principal traits found in commercialized GM foods are resistance to Roundup herbicide, which is, that's why they make it, so it resists having poison sprayed on it. This has resulted in increased use of Roundup. As Paul Ashitoff testified, millions of tons more herbicide being sprayed, and consequent increased chemical residues in our food, in our water, in our soil and air, and a host of other negatives such as superweeds, which are becoming resistant to the ever-increasing amounts of poison being sprayed on them. The second is the actual insertion of insecticide, BT, directly into the genes of the food we eat. So in other words, putting poison in the food we eat. This doesn't make any sense. GM crops are generally monocrops. That means large areas of land are used for their production, and the same crop is repeatedly replanted year after year. This method of agriculture results in the degradation of the soil and topsoil loss, with long-term consequences to our ability to feed ourselves. Consumers have the right to know whether the foods they eat are produced using genetic modification techniques. The overwhelming majority of consumers, as much as 90% in major media surveys, want to know whether the foods they consume are GM or not. Foods produced using genetic modification are different. They're not substantially equivalent. They are different from foods produced without GM. GM food has a different genetic makeup, so obviously they're different than regular foods, as GM foods contain genetic material from other species of life. This is not possible in the natural environment or by other plant breeding techniques. So people testified today that this process has been going on for a long time. This is not correct. This is not possible in nature or in normal farming techniques.
Okay, Mr. Ferguson, can you summarize?
Yes. Thus, GM foods are significantly different than regular foods and should be labeled so consumers can identify the GM foods and avoid them should they choose to do so. There are unknown human health and environmental risks associated with GM foods. Scientific studies show cause for concerns. Without labeling, consumers are unable to identify GM foods and don't know if they're consuming them or not. Please vote in favor of HB 174. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, John Hewitt, Grocery Manufacturers Association in opposition. Pamela Simon in support. Rebecca Miller in support. Sally Irwin in opposition. Sherry Minor McNamara, Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii in opposition. Dustin Brucker in opposition. Robert Harris, Sierra Club in support. Natalie Norberg in support. Ann Gomers in support. Jack DeFeo in support. Brian Lehman in support. 4-H Ag Hawaii in opposition. Alan Kramate in support. Alicia Malufite, Hawaii Crop Improvement Association, comments. With Amy Yamaguchi next. Hi, Alicia.
Sorry, I thought I put opposition. I oppose, just for clarity. You probably knew that already. So, I mean, we kind of return to years and years of this type of testimony where, you know, the Right to Know campaign, if they really want to know the food they're eating, all we would suggest is that the most affordable option is to go with the organic label as it is right now. It's a voluntary label. There's a bill currently introduced that would do that. If you label the other 20% of the foods GMO-free, then that's a cost that will be borne, and if they have to regulate it, it's not going to be such a burden on the rest of the 80% of the food. Economically, it just makes more sense. And for the folks that really want those foods and they know where to buy it, they can go to Down to Earth, as Mr. Ferguson mentioned, they can go to Whole Foods. There are niche markets available to service those people and those foods. I would speak, not just for the industry, but for almost everybody in my family who's on EBT. It's just unfortunate they buy food and products based on price. My husband's EBT is only $150 a month. He doesn't look at the labels. He looks at the price. And unfortunately, if you pass a mandated labeling bill, you're going to force a regulatory process and a tax on consumers for the 80% of the food that's in the supermarket. And it's really not fair. It's not fair to the rest of the people. It's not fair to my family that's struggling every day, for every family in Hawaii that's struggling every day to put food on the table. So it's very simple. Label the other 20% GMO-free, and it's a voluntary process if that's the case. To suggest that the GMO food needs to be labeled because it's not safe doesn't go to the heart of the foods that are not safe. CDC just came out with a report. 48 million people, 1 in 6 people get sick from food poisoning. Almost half of those people that are getting sick or dying are actually getting sick from fruits and vegetables, non-GMO. So there's a direct link to some of the food that people are getting sick from, but it's not GMO food. So what is the purpose of labeling that food? It's misleading. And for the papaya guys, there's 150 papaya farmers here in Hawaii. If you saw the Super Bowl yesterday, it was great. Paul Harvey. Get this. This is great. You're going to love this. God said, I need somebody willing to get up before dawn, milk cows, work all day in the fields, milk cows again, eat supper, then go to town and stay past midnight at a meeting of the school board. So God made a farmer. And you know what? You got to listen to the farmers. The Farm Bureau, Lauren Mochida, and the papaya farmers, the 150 small papaya farmers who are growing transgenic papaya right now. It's healthy and it's delicious. There's no reason to force a labeling mandate on those small farmers. Thank God for our small farmers.
Thank you. Amy Yamaguchi in support. Angeliquid Snowman in support. Arnold Coulter in support. Aubrey Allen, Babes Against Biotech in support. Barbara Moran. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, aloha. My name's Aubrey Allen, and I'm here with Babes Against Biotech. And I'm not a scientist. I'm not going to come here with a bunch of facts for you folks, but I know this is really bad from all of the research that scientists have been doing over the years. And if they say it's not any different, then why do they have patents for their food that has to prove that there's nothing else out there in the whole wide world like it? And it's not just poisoning people, it's poisoning the land. All of the chemical spray, it goes into the neighborhoods like Wailua, and it's being sprayed right by the high school. Syngenta, for instance, was kicked out of Kauai for poisoning an entire elementary school, another genetic engineer company that makes these GMO crops. And it goes into the air, all of the chemical drift dust. Then when it rains every day in Hawaii. That goes into our soil and messes up the pH balance. We cannot grow food that's been around since the beginning of time as good because it messes up with the pH balance. Then from the rain, it goes into our freshwater streams. It's a small island. It filters through the water supply. And then it goes into our oceans, messes with our reef, all of our wildlife in the ocean, to the land. I can't give you a bunch of facts, but I know it's bad and it's not Pono. And I just really hope that you guys give us the right, like 9 out of 10 people that know about it will say they just want a label. Like, we're not asking for much. We just want to know what we're eating, and not everyone is as educated about it. And they would really like a label so that they can make a conscious decision whether or not they want to support that or not. Because right now, people don't know they're supporting it. And if you tell them what it is, they're not going to want to support it. That's why they don't want to put labels on it, because it's like putting a skull with crossbones, GMO. So I just hope that you guys listen to the people, because majority of Hawaii wants it, and I don't see why the people that vote for you guys can't have what they want, and it's just to know what they're eating. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara Mora Adan. Comments? Benjamin Schaefer in support. Dennis Killed in opposition. Brenton Pang in support. Bill Seaton in support. Brad Bordessa in support. Brian Lehman in support. Christy Kalama in support. Cindy Goldstein, DuPont Pioneer, in opposition.
Good morning, Chair Woolley, Vice Chair Onishi, and members of the House Committee on Ag. Pioneer opposes House Bill 174 calling for labeling. We strongly believe in the importance of research and innovation to develop crops that bring benefit to farmers. Our work is science-based, and the introduction of new genetically engineered crops follows years of evaluation and testing under a robust regulatory system. There's widespread agreement among scientists in the regulatory system that the scientific studies and thorough evaluation of data show biotech crops and food ingredients are safe. We have 2 federal agencies that already scrutinize and regulate biotech crops. The U.S. Department of Agriculture provides extensive oversight and already evaluates health and safety impacts of new genetically engineered crops and genes prior to the initial introduction of a genetically engineered crop. Also, the Environmental Protection Agency has a role in regulation, and the U.S. Food and Drug Administration reviews extensive data on chemical composition, nutritional value, potential for allergenicity, and other health and safety related components of genetically engineered crops. This bill does call for the State Department of Agriculture to develop a new administrative program that would require creation of an infrastructure to carry out the program. This would be costly. The cost would be passed on to those of us that live here in Hawaii and shop at farmers markets, grocery stores, and retail markets. Already, the Hawaii Department of Ag is tasked with oversight of genetically engineered crops and foods. It's redundant to have federal agencies and a state agency already tasked with oversight of these crops. Consumers that wish to avoid eating genetically engineered foods have a way to easily differentiate these products. We know that organic whole foods and organic food ingredients will not have GE content. We also have food products that are labeled as GMO free on their existing labels. Thank you for the opportunity to present testimony in support of science-based decision-making in opposition to the proposed legislation for required labeling. Thank you.
Thank you. Claire Jumonville, in support. Claudia, in opposition. Clifton Hasegawa, in opposition. Courtney Brunch, GMO-free Maui, Oahu, Big Island, in support. Craig Turner, in support. Cynthia Chun, in support. David Dinner, in support. Dee Rackley, in support. Diana, in opposition. Diane Luna Hall, in opposition. Don Gerbig, in opposition. Donna Maltz, in support. Douglas Pittman, in support. Gladys Baisa, Maui County Council Chair, in support. H. Doug Matsuoka, in support. Harold Kieser, in opposition. Henry Curtis, Life of the Land, in support.
Aloha, Chair Woolley, Vice Chair Onishi, and members of the committee. I'm Henry Curtis, Executive Director of Life of the Land. Life of the Land has a long role playing in agriculture and sustainable agriculture. We're one of the groups that sued over the heptachlor incident in the 80s. I also have a long personal experience in agriculture. I went door to door on pesticide issues in California in the 80s. One of the issues that has not really been addressed is the religious issue. There are some religions that have dietary restrictions, and yet the biotech industry suggests that they can take certain genes of certain animals and insert them in plants and sell them as plants. God be darned. Second, we've heard from the pro-biotech industry that 1 out of 6 Americans gets a health-borne disease every year, and they're not from GMO. I wonder how, without labeling, they know that. Third, the biotech industry says there's no cost impact except if you pass this bill. That's malarkey. The invention of superweeds and the heavier use of pesticides has a massive effect and a cost impact on every American. So it's not that this bill would drive up costs. This bill would help save some of the costs we're currently paying for. I don't see that Monsanto and others have put up a bond for when these problems develop. They don't have a bond ready to do the cleanup costs. When did we make a conscious decision in this society to have the companies that developed chemical warfare be in charge of our food supply? Finally, The biotech industry has been involved in a process of revolving doors, where they lend their people to regulators who write very comfortable laws, and then they go back to industry and they say, see, we're regulated. It is time to pass laws that have widespread support and not support an industry which represents 1/100th of 1,000th of 1%. Thank you.
Thank you. James Massey in support. James Marcy.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for hearing this bill. It's spectacular. When this passes, you guys will be heroes. I take my health very seriously. I take the health of my children and my grandchildren extremely seriously. I hope you will too. I'm a retired naval officer. I used to work for NASA. I have a master's degree in 2 classes from ABD.
Excuse me. Can I ask you to talk into the mic so we can hear?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm a retired naval officer. I've worked for NASA. I have a master's degree, and I've also 2 classes from ABD. I support good science. These GMOs are not good science. Mr. Perlock said there's no studies saying that there's bad or whatever. All the studies I've seen, there's plenty that say this GMO science is not good. He also said that there's no difference in the nutritional value of the foods. The studies that I've read, dating back to the 50s, say that these pesticides that they spray on our land are depleting the soil of nutrients, and it's affecting our food. These studies, compare food from before the pesticides and then after the pesticides. Even dating back to the 50s, it was bad, and it's getting worse now. And we're seeing it in our health of our children. The health of the entire country is being affected. It was also mentioned that, about papayas, if you're going to hurt the papaya farmers if you label it. They're already labeling it when they send it to Japan. What's the problem? KITV even asked them in an interview when they first started shipping them to Japan, and they had to put the label on there. How much is it a problem? How much does it cost? And the guy, the papaya farmer said, no, it's no problem, no cost. So that argument to me is a fallacy. I grew up in Michigan. I spent summers at a lake cottage with my grandparents, and I go back there and visit probably every 3 or 4 years. And back when I was a child, the frogs would sing you to sleep, hundreds of them. You go back there now, if you hear one, it's a surprise. And it's because it's surrounded by farms, and they spray this atrazine that Syngenta sprays out here. And it kills the frogs. It changes their sex, too. I mean, it's just, these are actual studies, and this is known facts. I mean, we need to know what we're eating, so please label. Please support this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to recess this committee for a couple minutes so that we can convene a joint committee, and then we will come back for more testimony. So we are currently recessing the 9:30 a.m. agenda. Mahalo. So we're going to...
and swipe them through a machine, rather than mailing those checks, for example, from Kauai, Maui, from the Big Island. Those checks now are mailed, bundled, and sent here for processing. We're looking into how we can electronically process that. Our taxpayer service area, where I'd say the call answer rate has gone from 90% to 40%. Some states have what they call a taxpayer service portal. The taxpayer gets online, enters their ID number, password, and they can immediately see their account. Many of the questions taxpayers inquire about now are, have you received my payment? Have you received my tax return? I sent in a payment for this amount, but only a certain amount has been applied to our taxes. What happened to the rest? The rest could have been applied to fees, penalties, and interest, but they have to inquire to find out how. By having a portal where the taxpayer can get online, they'll be able to do self-service, similar to what banks do. those that are in the compliance area, we pretty much manually select returns to be audited. The Internal Revenue Service in many states have formulas, analytics, which they use. And like I said, we look at these 19 different market segments. Each segment is different, and we can develop analytics to determine which are the best cases to be audited each year. With limited staffing, we need to prioritize the work and do the most productive ones first. Another area is actually audits. Some states, for example, the state of Texas, recently went to a seminar where some of their audits are done self-audit. The business does the audit. Some audits are done manually based, again, on formulas. So those are things that we can explore. There must be better ways of using technology that's available to do our job more efficiently. Like I mentioned, our major part of our budget this year is taxes and modernization. And it's not something that came up in the past month. We've been working on this for the past 2 years. When I first took this position as director, at that same time, the state auditors had issued a report regarding the Department of Taxation and a contract that they had with a computer vendor. We looked at their report and we tried to see what we could do in implementing some of those recommendations. In February 2011, Deputy Director
Congratulations, San Francisco. You might not be getting a trophy, but you will be getting a cup of Jell-O pudding.
And we are hoping to be able to reconvene and end the recess for this 11 a.m. at 3 p.m. today in the auditorium. With that, we're going to recess this joint committee hearing. Okay, good? 3? Is that okay? My guess is we're going to defer, but I just... Now, reconvening the Committee on Agriculture, 9:30 a.m. agenda. We are still on HB 174. We're still on HB 174, and ask that all of you stand on your written testimony if you're able to, and limit your testimony to 2 minutes. Mahalo.
Okay, HB 174, continue with testimony. Jana Boggs, comments? Jane Mau in support. Janet Pappas in support.
Thank you, representatives. My name is Jan Pappas.
Excuse me, can you talk into the mic, please?
Sorry. My name is Jan Pappas. I'm from IAEA, and I'm in favor of House Bill 174. Today I'm representing myself, my husband, my 2 boys, and their unborn grandchildren at this point. Also, all the people in this state and country who care about their health, all the babies who have been come into this world and who have a right to uncontaminated, wholesome food, and who cannot yet speak for themselves. All the people in poverty who must often accept whatever food is put in front of them. All the people in our country who don't yet realize that their right to choose the kind of food they would prefer to eat has been taken away. And finally, all the people in the other counties of Hawaii who late last year showed their support for GMO labeling. For all these people, I support House Bill 174, the labeling of genetically modified foods, because we all have a right to know what's in the food we're eating. I've been calling and writing to companies to find out which of their products actually have GMO products in them. And it's not an easy task. It takes hours to do this kind of thing, which I think should be a simple right of people to know what foods they're eating. Another thing that I'm concerned about is that possibly organic products are being watered down because of the drift of genetic products into the organic fields. Something I just read from the USDA is that it's not 100% organic now. It might just be 95% organic, which they're having to do because of the drift of genetically modified products into organic fields. They don't want to take away the organic label, but they're having trouble allowing or saying that it is 100%, the organic farmers are, because of this drift. I also wanted to point out that there really aren't that many individual food products themselves, not processed foods now, but food products that are genetically modified. There's a list of 8 products, and these are corn, soybeans, canola, cottonseeds, sugar beets, Hawaiian papaya of a certain variety.
Okay, can you summarize your testimony, please?
And a small amount of zucchini and yellow squash, and also some alfalfa that is fed to livestock. Several products have been rejected for being genetically modified. So, all the other products that are fresh foods are not. So 80% may include processed foods when you go to the store and you're attempting to decide what is genetically modified or not. But if you stick with fresh foods, except for those ones I mentioned, you will be at least able to know that those at this point are not modified. But what frightens me is that there's the possibility of those being modified as well. So thank you very much for allowing me to testify.
Thank you. Javier Mendez Alvarez, in support. Jeannie Johnson, in support. Jeff Berman, in support. Jeffrey Friedman, in support. Jerry Konanui, in support. Jessica Mitchell, in support. Joan Lander, in support. Joseph Kahn, in support. J.W. Nalda, in support. Kalon Prensky, in support. Karen Ingersoll, in support. Kathleen Campbell, in support. Kenneth Kamiya, in opposition. Kerry Marks, in support. Chris Bodesa, in support. Kristen Mack, in opposition. L. Pauahi Ho'okano, in support. Linda Lee Brown, in support. Lori Pai Kuli Stride, in support. Uli Unimori, in opposition. Luna Carlisle, in support. Mariah Martino, in support. Maria Gold, in support. Martha Lynn, in support. Mary McClung, in support. Melissa Anderson, in support. Melissa Yee, in support. Merle Hayward, in support. Michael Brody Jr., in support.
Mahalo, Chair Willie, Vice Chair Onishi, members of the committee. I'm going to stand by my written testimony. I just have one very quick point to highlight. I'm a Native American. I come from the tribes of the Mohawk and Cherokee. That means my ancestor is the corn plant. So when Cindy Goldstein and DuPont Pioneer buy 3,250 acres just uphill from my grandfather in Wailua, this is a process that I disagree with. Please give me a label so that I can choose not to buy genetically modified products. Mahalo.
Thank you. Michael Tada, in support.
Because I have a hard time, I'm going to read it and then he'll read it again. Director, and I testify in support of House Bill 174. Every food containing genetically modified organism or GMO. The my reasons for supporting this bill are numerous. However, I will offer you my top 3 reasons why I believe that the limiting of foods containing GMOs are a good thing. Then the first reason I support the limiting of foods containing genetically modified organisms is the right to know aspect. In order for a person to maintain a healthy diet, he or she must be knowledgeable about what goes into the food they are about to consume. Now, this is especially true for people who require a special diet due to health situations or heart and diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and etc. Now, this is truly the reason to ensure the body getting a healthy diet. The second reason for my support is that linking the GMO accessibility. Now, on this point, I'm a little ignorant, I confess, but I have read somewhere that there is a link. Indirectly, I have no idea to disability such as autism, cerebral palsy, multiple sclerosis, etc. Now, this bill could potentially save lives and or slow down or prevent the harmful effect. The third and final reason is common sense. What does that mean? Because we are in our bodies, because it is our bodies, we have a moral obligation to make sure that we are not consuming foods that might make us sick. Now, just like we make sure that our cars have enough gas and oil, even though we must make sure that we are not hurting our bodies by eating food containing GMO. Without being I hereby submit my testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Tan.
To make sure that Michael's testimony is understood, I'd like to repeat it very briefly.
We have it. He submitted his testimony, so we have a copy of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mike Brodo, in support. Mike Wong, in support. M.S. Matson, in support. Nancy Redfeather, comments. Natalie Norberg, in support. Noel Tamura, Hawaii Food Industry Association, in opposition. Pamela Wiley, in support. Paul Carter, in support. Philip Oji, in support. I'm sorry about that. Robert Bueller, in support. Robert Petrice, in support. Robin Smith, in support. Rodney Evans, in support. Ron Carlson, in support. Rosemary Aldridge, in opposition. Sabina Pittman, in support. Say, in support. Shane Almasin, in opposition. Shannon Rudolph, in support. Sharon, in support. Stan Waller-Syke, in support. Summer Faria, in support. Susan Douglas, in support. Tamara Paulton, in support. Tammy Lester, in support. Tanya Winter, in support. Thomas Hall, in support. Thomas Maringolo, in opposition. Valerie Gobo, comments. Are there any persons here that want to testify?
Why don't we,
Chair Woolley, Vice Chair Onishi, members of the committee. I'm sorry you called my name before I was out of the room. My name is Alan Gottlieb. I'm here on behalf of the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council. I'm a rancher and the Government Affairs Chairperson of the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council. The Hawaii Cattlemen's Council strongly opposes HB 174. Along with our national organization, our association has always felt that such labeling, such as country of origin labeling, should be a market-driven tool, not a regulatory one. The Hawaii Cattlemen's Council supports all types of farming and ranching, natural, organic, conventional, and cutting edge, including GMO and other science-advanced forms, and does not try to endorse one over the other. We don't see that the advancement of one should be at the risk or detriment of the other. This bill goes far beyond what was even proposed and failed on California's ballot this past November, as it also requires that any meat and poultry, milk and eggs, anything from livestock fed with GMO feeds be labeled. This would require the vast majority of all meat and poultry, milk and eggs coming into the state of Hawaii be labeled. If we're striving to promote food security in Hawaii, this labeling requirement would put Hawaii more at risk, as it is estimated 80% of the foods from here and elsewhere will have to be labeled, adding even more cost to consumers. We agree that consumers have the right to know, but wouldn't it make more sense for GMO-free products to label their products as such, placing it as a premium product in some people's minds? The premium price could more than pay for adding a label stating the product is GMO-free. Food labeled organic generally sells for much more than the non-organic counterparts. Are we next going to propose labeling all non-organic foods, non-organic, or any foods not made in Hawaii, not made in Hawaii? Whole Foods is a great model for giving consumers the things they want to know. They offer organic foods, GMO-free foods, and natural foods, and 5 different levels of meat. They don't force producers to label their product GMO or non-organic, but they have signs by food bins letting consumers know if the food in the bin is organic, natural, or GMO-free. If this is what consumers want, shouldn't we let markets use this for their competitive advantage?
Mr. Godley, can you please summarize?
Yep. Genetic engineering has literally saved the papaya industry in this state, even though some will have you believe otherwise. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify.
Thank you.
And before we continue, as you come up, if you could please state your name, that would be great. We are not going to have time, as I look at this line, for everybody right now. We're going to have to break at 11:45 so that the members can go to session. But I want to make sure that we all have a chance to hear what you have to say. So Jerry, the committee clerk, for Vice Chair Onishi, is going to make sure he gets the name of everybody so that we know your status, if you submitted written testimony, if you want to submit oral testimony, those types of issues. So if you could provide that information to him, and we will try to get through as many testimonials as we can. Mahalo.
Aloha, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Annie Sweet. I don't know about you, but I do not walk down the pesticide aisle at Home Depot and think, oh, let's add that to my meal tonight. And yet there is GMBT corn, which is a registered pesticide and is available for purchase with no label telling me so. I like knowing what I'm eating. Like most people, I think I eat a healthy, balanced diet. When I shop, I read labels to make sure I am making choices that are intentional. What I don't see on those labels is whether what I am holding in my hands has been altered in some way by genetically inserting the material of one species, animal, plant, bacteria, virus, or a chemical, into the genetic sequencing of another species. This concerns me because there have been no long-term studies on the effects of consuming products genetically engineering on humans. It seems logical that our citizens should have the right to choose whether to eat foods that haven't been proven safe for long-term consumption. A simple label gives me the opportunity to make that decision myself, just like I can read a label and see how much trans fat it contains and make an educated choice regarding whether or not to eat it. If I were to visit Japan and pick up a rainbow papaya grown in the state of Hawaii, I would see a label telling me it is a product of genetic engineering. Why don't the citizens of Hawaii have the same right regarding the same product on our own soil? We all have the right to make educated decisions for ourselves and for our families. Please vote yes on HB 147. Doing so proves that you agree. And I would like to say one thing to the Monsanto lobbyists regarding suggesting that I only purchase organic foods. By doing so, I would be pushing the ratio up of foods that are imported into our state well above the 85 to 90% that it is right now, and I would be eliminating the opportunity to buy from the conventional farmer who practices good agricultural practices and who is the small family farmer that she says she supports. So how is a label not going to enhance my choices? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Winnie Heath, private citizen. I'm testifying in opposition to HB 174. I support local agriculture by shopping at farmers markets and buying island fresh and local grown as much as possible. How much does it cost the consumer to have the farmer label the product island fresh and local grown? A GMO lobbyist says it raises the cost to me. Okay. You are intelligent people. Okay. You must know if we follow this bill and we label every product that has a bit of soy lecithin, soy isolate, protein, whatever, high fructose corn sweetener, and any of the hundreds of ingredients that have some GMO soy or corn or other processed GMO material in it, that we would be labeling something like 80% of the processed foods in the supermarket or more, and you know that would be a little ridiculous. So I want to know why you intelligent people would not hear Bill HB 733, which is a more reasonable, more easily implemented labeling bill of labeling whole GMO foods. Instead of this one, I think it was designed to fail. And you know, you're intelligent, you know that the real reason that GMO companies are afraid of labeling GMO foods is because of the yuck factor. Okay? The recent example was pink slime. When people found out that pink slime was actually lean, finely textured beef from beef scraps that with the fat melted off and pureed and sterilized with ammonia, yuck! They didn't want to eat it anymore. And we just had an example recently of that flame retardant put in Gatorade, brominated vegetable oil. When people learned of that, yuck, they didn't want to eat it. Gatorade had to change the formula even though they said it was safe. Now people in Hawaii, like Alicia Maluafiti's relatives on the EBT cards. They don't care what it is. You know, Spam is cheap. They don't care what it is. They'll eat it anyway. But I care, and I want to know, and I want to choose. Please. Please. I want you to hear Bill HB 733. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning, committee. Thank you for hearing testimony today. My name is Trisha Gonzalez, and I'm testifying on behalf of Down to Earth Organic and Natural. We have 4 stores here on Oahu and 1 on Maui. We've been serving our island community since 1977. Down to Earth supports this bill and labeling of all GMO foods. We feel strongly that consumers have the right to know and choose the food that they are buying. As increased awareness spreads about genetically modified ingredients, so does public concern. Our customers are asking if our products have GMOs. They want to know, and they have a right to know. Regardless of the argument surrounding whether GMOs are safe or not to consume, this issue is a separate issue. This is a basic right to know what is in our food. And we support this. We support our customers having a right to choose. The people are asking, Down to Earth is asking, and we the people have spoken. So please support House Bill 174, and please pass this bill, and thank you for your consideration. Aloha.
Thank you. Next testifier.
Aloha, my name is Daniel Anthony, and I am in support of this bill. I'd like to speak to the Democratic patriot in each and every one of you. A vote to hear the bill, a vote yes, is a patriotic voice to hear the bill. You know, if by voting no, what you're saying is that you're unpatriotic and you refuse to even openly hold a discussion. Now, I just want to talk about a couple of points here. One, as you guys are hearing this testimony, I hope you guys are doing a little bit of research about the people that are giving you testimony. I can tell you, I was a naughty kid as a youth. I stole some money from my auntie. My auntie is now Senator Miley Shimabukuro. You know, life is long. I think you should look at the companies that are voting against this, and you'll find out that these guys are known around the world for ruining our environment. Now, if the very same company which Vietnam is still dealing with, the consequences of Agent Orange is now telling you that what they're doing is safe, I think you should question that on a patriotic level. This is when the same people come multiple times with the same sweet story, but in the end, they fail to really show substance. The second thing is that these are some of the wealthiest corporations in the world. Let me tell you, if they're telling you about cost, Gangi, come to my house. I'll tell you guys about cost savings, okay? So that's, I feel, very important. Thirdly, when you look at the type of farmers that they're supporting, you know, if they say small businesses are the heartbeat, the soul of America, well, small farmers are the original blood and sweat of this country. And I'm talking about free farmers, free with the choice. Now, these corporations take away that choice, and they take away that freedom to be an American, that freedom to be a human being in America is at stake when I take my children to the store and I cannot teach my children how to make the best decision. Now, I ask you this question. If there are GMO corns not for human consumption and GMO corns for human consumption, and you were to both have the corn seed in front of you, how would you be able to tell which was for human consumption and which wasn't? I can tell you, every single kernel is labeled at these factories because the Monsanto scientists themselves, just by looking at the kernels, would not be able to tell the difference. Every seed corn is how these guys are paid. It is already labeled. Now, when it comes to labeling, I will summarize this very quickly. When it comes to labeling, guys, it's simply a change. Your diaper is dirty. Change the diaper. You know, this is not a big thing. When your clothes is dirty, you change it. You don't look at the cost. You make the change. The community is not going to stop bringing this issue up. It behooves you guys to not deal with this. Deal with it now. The solution is democracy. The solution is that you guys vote in favor, not of this bill, but of the American right to discuss it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Aloha Chair, aloha Vice Chair and committee members. My name is Jerry DiPietro. I'm a volunteer with Hawaii Seed and GMO-free Kauai. Consumers have the right to know if their food is produced with genetic engineering. Labeling and complete bans are standard practice in many countries. As a matter of fact, the United States is one of the last countries to address this issue. And one thing the Chemical Corporation folks, these chemical corn guys, fail to mention when they talk about the hardships of labeling is that the Hawaiian papaya, the rainbow GMO papaya, is labeled before it even leaves our state when it goes to Japan. So we on Kauai have 5 of the big chemical corporations conducting open-air field tests right next to our communities and schools. And I'll tell you, these crops are not substantially equivalent. Here we are, same as 10 years ago. There is no disclosure as to where the fields are, what they are spraying, no human feeding studies, and no post-market study. Just one big national experiment with the biotech companies saying, trust us. One reason it is difficult to pin disease to GMO food is because in America there is no control group. There are no large groups of people who are not eating a diet that includes GMO food. When you look at health and eating habits of Americans, how would we know for sure if GMO has a link to obesity, heart disease, diabetes, allergies, attention deficit, and reproductive issues? For sure there is an epidemic of poor health, and for sure there is an epidemic of people eating transgenic foods with viral promoters and antibiotic resistance, but not one good study. How very disappointing for our country. It really saddens me to see us, the world, at the start of a new millennium with the herbicide industry as the beneficiary of the food supply. The government offices hold biases born out of conflict of interest, and the trust issues are amplified by the question of who really benefits from GMO food. So with the GMO papaya, there's 2 antibiotic-resistant markers. If you were someone who had health problems and you relied on antibiotics, you might wish to avoid eating these foods, and we should have a choice. What could be more stupid than to put toxic genes into our food? So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we're going
to allow just one more testifier for now, and then we'll recess until 1. I know the members are required to go to session, so I appreciate that. We will be back here at 1. But go ahead.
Thank you so much, representatives. My name is Nomi Carmona. I'm the president and founder of a nonprofit called Babes Against Biotech. We're devoted to environmental education and awareness about the impacts of GMOs. We represent over 1,900 members, and we're growing very, very quickly. I submitted an extensive testimony to you, 19 pages, 234 resources, of which 207 are peer-reviewed scientific studies demonstrating the risks to the environment and our health by eating GMOs. I'm very tired of hearing biotech representatives who are being paid to say there's no scientific evidence, these are harmful. I have given you 207, and the studies they're referring to are paid for by their own industry and their interest groups. Did you know that only 90-day trials are required to release a new GMO product into our food supply? These GMOs have been found in numerous animal studies to show generational effects in the 2nd and 3rd generations that are very serious, including sterility, infertility, endocrine disruption, cancer, cancerous tumors, organ enlargement, problems with protein and cholesterol synthesis, and problems with the kidney, liver, and spleen, as well as the digestive system as well. So we're not playing. We have a right to know. And we're tired of asking over and over again when 61 countries already require GMO labeling and 29 have banned GMOs in some form or another, the entire European Union. Are we not worthy to know what is in our food? Do you not respect our own choices enough? I don't think it's you personally,
but you have an opportunity to advance these measures today, and it's quite pertinent. Over 1,000 people marched on the Capitol on opening day on January 16th, demanding GMO labeling and the abolishment of the PLCC. Not a single person asked that non-GMO food be labeled. Not a single person. We want GMO foods labeled. They're reliant, this industry, on the fact that we cannot identify their products. They have a consistent history in denying the dangers of their products and fighting labeling in the name of cost. Pertinent case in the late 70s when chemicals like Monsanto's DDT, PCBs, and vinyl chloride were starting to be proven harmful to people. Chemical companies, including Monsanto, strongly resisted with increased regulation and a massive PR campaign that said it would cost 2 million jobs and have a negative economic impact of $65 billion. After the stronger regulations were enacted, the actual cost turned out to be 5% of their estimate. It had no impact to jobs, and the industry continued to grow. I've attached in my testimony to you a study analysis of 4 major studies that are independently funded about the cost of GMO labeling and 2 industry funded. You can see the industry funded are greatly over-exaggerated, but if you summarize all of them together, it's about $5 per capita, so $5 per person per year. On average, to increase that. Vegetarians and vegans alone need to know what is in their food and if it has animal genes. I'll do my best to wrap this up quickly. They've collected themselves with $45 million to fight GMO labeling in California. I don't want to hear they don't have the money to tell me that GMOs are in my food. Class action lawsuits are starting to pop up across the state, and already 52,000 dead sea urchins have been found off the coast of a pioneer farm in Kauai. So the sea urchins are the canary in the coal mine of the ocean. How long are you going to wait? They're the most endangering and invasive species of all, and there may be no recuperation. We may never be able to grow food on the land they're growing on right now. This is the most pressing issue in Hawaii today. They're irresponsibly releasing highly controversial new life forms of highly questionable ethics in regard to health and environmental safety. They've been exiled from dozens of countries, and the damages are piling up. Without proper labeling, we cannot trace the effects here. Our Hapai mothers should be able to choose whether or not they want to be like the mothers in Canada who had 84% of their fetal blood contaminated with BT pesticide and 96% of the mother's blood. And
okay, can you start to summarize, please?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I've said almost everything I want to say, except for families who are struggling with affording food, they may want to consider not donating tens of thousands of dollars to politicians and lobbying efforts. Mahalo.
Thank you.
Okay. Babes Against Biotech, mahalo. So I appreciate everybody taking the time to be here. We want to make sure we hear everybody's testimony. We're going to be recessing this hearing until 1 p.m. We will return. Mahalo. Recess.